All right, let's get into another chapter review. So let's start with Rhetorical Act, chapter 13. I'm talking about the medium. So this one's talking all about media in general, but also how rhetoric applies to the mediums that we have today. Its main point is that all media is basically rhetoric, and that basically no matter what you do, what you produce, it has a message, and it's trying to persuade you of something, even if it's to be entertained. It still has that inherent characteristic. Another main point is that all TV is driven by profit, so no matter how good it is or how artistic it is still is trying to make a profit. And ethos is a big thing in today's media, is that so the more reliable a brand is or a name, the more likely people are to support it and continue watching. Moving on to readings and pop culture, we've got Knox on his essay on novel reading. This is probably the oldest one that we have in the entire book. He's talking about how novel reading leads to a wildimation and how it stops people from wanting to study. This is a pretty interesting point because this is something we could apply to modern media, stuff like Netflix, YouTube, social media, all the stuff like that, and how those things draw our attention away and make our attention so short that it stops us from actually doing serious study, which is a problem that a lot of students have today. It is kind of interesting, though, that he's criticizing reading, seeing as how in his time people would have been lucky to have been literate. So I just think it's kind of odd that he's criticizing reading in such a way. Next we have Brenner, her essay on teen literature and fan culture. The main point of this one is talking about fan fiction and how fan fiction is actually a pretty great outlet for creativity. It's free of a lot of the economics of media and culture, or not culture, but just media and production and corporations and stuff like that. And that people can just be creative and take things that they love and use them as a basis to be more creative than maybe the original creators were. There is some monetization in fan fiction, as we can see from 50 Shades of Grey, which did start out as a fan fiction of Twilight. So even in this community there is monetization, but mostly it's for expression. It's a really interesting piece of media, and it shows that that media isn't just something to be consumed, it's something to be thought about, and it can, improve people's life by giving them a creative outlet. Next, we have Rose on their essay on immersion. I'm going to be honest, this one's kind of confusing. I didn't really get the main point of it, but let me just talk a little bit about the actual topics that were in there. He's talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how it's a really great tool for immersion that sort of inspired him later in life on how to create other immersive experiences. The main point of this essay is talking about the AI game. I'm not sure exactly, but it was from the AI movie in the early 2000s, and there was a sort of game online that was about puzzle solving on the early internet, and it required a lot of cooperation and real world knowledge and tie-ins, and it was very immersive for the time, and it was quite popular. The last sort of bit of information in this essay is talking about Robinson Crusoe, the book, and how it's prefaced by saying that this is a real book, and essentially getting people to trust it and also be more immersed, because if they believed it was real, they would be more immersed and more impressed by the fantastic elements of the book. Next we have Klosterman on the undead modern life, talking about zombies and media and how they relate to us as people. Basically, the main point of this is that zombies represent our modern lives, that zombies are in media very easy to kill, very easy to avoid, but they're sort of an ever-present threat, sort of like how we have a lot of tasks in our modern lives that are very easy, very accomplishable, but they just never stop coming, and we have to keep completing them, and that can become very monotonous and sort of drain people of their life in a sense. And that a lot of other things like sort of social media can lead us to like a loss of cognizance and make us sort of zone out and make us sort of zombie-like. So that's sort of the main points in that essay. Next we have Burak and Escape the Matrix. Burak is talking a lot about FOMO, or the fear of missing out. Sort of online has conditioned us to sort of want to view as much as possible, and that when we're online we can see as much as possible and there's no sort of constraints, and that makes real life feel sort of limiting in a sense, because we are limited by our physical bodies and like time and a lot of things that we don't have online, that we can just cover all kinds of topics when we're online and not really worry about sort of the repercussions of that. But in real life, that the essay is sort of finished by saying we should really cherish all of our time spent in the real world, and that we just have to kind of let some things go and not be too upset about them, because we're never going to see everything, and we're never going to do everything. So we should be happy with the things that we do end up doing. The final one is Moore, talking about video games. And his general idea is that humans are social creatures, and we get a lot more enjoyment, a lot more fulfillment out of social interaction and physical interaction. So he was creating booths in warehouses and stuff, and having actual people cooperate on games and have a good time, and how those experiences are generally more fulfilling than the typical online experience, which is one person sitting alone playing online with a bunch of other people, but they can't see any of those other people and they can't see each other. So we may be communicating with them, but we aren't sharing the exact same physical experience, and that can be sort of limiting and not be the most fulfilling experience. So yeah, those are all the essays.